Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Ball Agenda Reveal Show. Special episode today, wrapping up for the Euros before we take our summer break and come back for the upcoming season. Very, very excited to be joined on my left-hand side by Mr. Mekawani. How are you doing today, sir, with the new studio that you're in today?
Yeah, I'm good. Happy to analyze the ending of Copa and Euros. Great endings for me in the Copa, but unfortunately not the Euros. But yeah, so let's go.
It's not coming home.
Great ending for me in both of them. It's coming Rome, the Mo effect. On my right-hand side, I'm joined by Mr. Chinedu Asinugo. How are you doing today, sir?
Before I acknowledge that, I can't believe you somehow brought Mourinho into this, but GG, I guess. I'm doing good. I'm ready to, as always, ready to talk about ball and ready to, give our takes on Euros and Copa. So let's get it.
Let's get right into it. We're mostly focused on the Euros in this episode, and we have a longer segment on that. So we'll start with the Copa America and the final, and what ended up being the first. I don't even know why people say it's the first, because the Olympics is pretty much a trophy, but the first widely accepted international trophy for Lionel Messi at Argentina, which with arguably the worst team / supporting cast that he's had in recent years. So we saw an amazing performances in the final from people like Rodrigo de Paul, people like Montiel, Emi Martinez looking solid at the back, and Angel Di Maria with a fantastic performance as well. I'm interested to see what you guys took from that final, what this means for Lionel Messi's legacy, and any other thoughts that you had about the Copa America as a whole. I'll start with you, Emeka.
Yeah, so as a football fan, I've never been a Barcelona fan or anything, but as a football fan, I think it's just amazing to see. And the way it happens, like the way life works, where, like you said, this is probably the worst team he's been in, worst supporting cast he's had, but he finally did it, and he actually played really poorly in the game, and he missed two decisive opportunities to kill off the game. But it was just justice, where he's been let down so many times in the past. The ghost of Higuain still haunts, but yeah, so I was just really happy for him to finally get it, and for his legacy, it's massive. I mean, I think three of us are in agreement that he's the best, and even though he hadn't won it, it was always something that was always a stick used against him. But for me, it doesn't change much, but I'm just happy he has that for his legacy, and no one can use that against him. Frauds are trying to bring up Nations League, but that doesn't count. First of all, that's just a made up nonsense.
Olympics has to be bigger than Nations League, even if you bring that up.
and even as well, and there's no equivalent like for American, or for Copa America or South American team. Just like saying, he's in the goods because he had the Premier League, but he hasn't competed in it, so you can't bring up some made up trophies anyway. So I think it was great for his legacy just to have it in terms of just really for the optics. But I think the real ones know whether he had won it this year or not. He's still number one for me.
And before I go to Chinedu, I'd also say, in terms of international performances, I saw a tweet that I really agreed with, that it was even sweeter that he dropped a 1/10, because in the World Cup final, it was a 10/10 and people bantered him for that. And we've seen that the international performances at these tournaments have always been stellar. He's won golden balls at World Cups. He's won best player of tournament at Copa America, top scorer. And even in this Copa America, you saw the stats for the Euros where Ronaldo and Sheik are top scorers. Someone else is top assist maker. Most through balls, someone else. Most shots is someone else. Most dribbles is someone else. Most through passes is someone else. And literally all those stats, Messi was number one in Copa America. This show was just dominant across everything, including goal scoring, goal contributions, and just overall carrying his team. So I think it was the cherry on top that he could finally get some help in the final when he wasn't at his best. And that's just something that I was really happy about. I'll pass to you, Chinedu, for your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, there's not much to add except, like Emeka said, just to echo the fact that, it's kind of the cherry on top, and it's rather prophetic that, you know, he was able to win despite his mid performance, because like you guys have said, he's been let down so many times, and it's only fair that now kind of he sits back and his team, you want to say carries, but they carry him to the trophy. And you could tell that everyone knew that how big this was for him, because at the very end all his teammates ran to him to celebrate, and it was more about him and his legacy. But at the same time, I'm still of the opinion, regardless of how this game ended, Messi is still, or would still have been regarded as, you know, top. I wouldn't say top one, because I mean Ronaldo stand, but I think top 1.5. But this was kind of just to shut up the people that would use that as an argument every single time. In what has looked like one of his most difficult seasons, I mean, going off the back of a very poor start, a lot of turmoil around his contract and the situation there at Barcelona with the president leaving as well. So it's kind of like, it's funny that this is the one season that he gets Copa America in, but it's also very, very nice to see that finally, you know, that debate can be ended as to his legacy.
And the last thought that
I was also very, I'm sorry, last point. I was also very impressed by the likes of DePaul, who we've already mentioned. And I mean, Di Maria, we've always known he's had the quality and he usually steps up in those big moments, but also Emi Martinez, who we forget, but prior to this season, he was playing second string at Arsenal. And so it's very, 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 very interesting to see the crop of Argentinian players coming up, with Paredes as well in there, with, you know, Lautaro Martinez, who's super young and has a long way to go. And so I think they have a lot to offer going forward.
Yeah, the other thing that I wanted to get your thoughts on, as just closing out this segment, is on Scaloni ball and this new crop of Argentine coaching talent that never quite was able to do what this team and Messi have done at this tournament. You have people like Ayala, Walter Samuel, Pablo Aimar supporting Lionel Scaloni, all who are former players, and what that means from what that togetherness that they were able to get into the Argentina team, but just also the dynamic that they brought. We saw it also work really well with Mancini and Vialli, and maybe we'll talk about that as well later. But I just wanted to get final thoughts on Scaloni ball and that Argentine coaching team of ex-legends, and how they were able to build that mentality in the team that necessarily wasn't as good, but was able to use that passion, togetherness, and one focus on the goal to get over the line. I'll start with you, Chinedu.
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head in terms of the passion. You could tell that this side was a very united side, and they weren't, like you guys mentioned, which I don't fully agree with, but it may be one of the worst, you know, sides that Messi has had to play with. But they didn't look like they were relying on individual brilliance. They were looking like they were kind of united in their cause, and they knew what they wanted from the start. They knew that they wanted to bring this home for Messi. And so I think kudos to the coaching staff for getting them rallied behind the cause, and also making the best use of talent. Because prior to this competition, I had the head of Montiel, and like I just said, Emi Martinez was not playing at the highest level, but they've been able to, you know, forget the individual side, forget the Kuhns and the Higuains, and now just rally a very strong Argentinian side and a very young one as well.
Yeah, and I'd say that's actually a really good point, because in the final, there were some really good, shrewd changes that I saw when the legs are going off for when he was losing legs at left back, Acuna, they bring in Tagliafico, making the change for Di Maria when he was starting to get leggy, and just keeping the energy up and really using that squad in a way that I think previous Argentina managers and coaching teams haven't really been able to. So, and like you said, not relying on just the big names with the Agueros, and really figuring out how they wanted the flow of the game to go and what players' strengths were, and really using that within their squad. I'll pass to Emeka right now.
Yeah, I think you guys hit the nail on the head, and it happens a lot when you have, you know, obviously former players together, and especially some of the characters, like you mentioned, likes of Walter Samuel. These are team first guys. Even Pablo Aimar, as skillful as he was and as technically brilliant as he was still a team player. And credit to Scaloni. And Scaloni himself was a workhorse, and he wasn't the most talented player, but again, you can see the grit and determination that these guys brought to the fold. And they played to their strengths. It's, like we said, it's not the most talented Argentine side, but they knew, like, go to the Mar, you have to play, you have to do the ugly side, and it was very ugly. They just kicked Brazil and Neymar for the whole game. And so credit to them for playing to their strengths. And there's a reason why this was the Argentine team that did the best, because before it was a lot of offensive talent at their peaks, and they couldn't quite get the balance right. And just like England, they might have had better squads, but sometimes when you have a mix of brilliance plus it that people are willing to sacrifice and do dirty work, sometimes you can have good results. And I'm not surprised, as surprised as you might expect, that this was a team that actually did it, because they were the team that was the most together.
Awesome. I think that's the best way to close out that segment. Now we'll move on to Euro 2020. We're going to recap the final, what we saw in the final, and then we'll go through a little bit of a tournament review as we touch on our teams of the tournament, which come with benches, and then also individual awards for people throughout the tournament. Well, starting from the final, Italy prevailed over England 3-2 on penalties, 1-1 after extra time. And what I saw was an England side that caught Italy kind of sleeping at the start of the match, scored an early goal, and probably for the first 10 minutes looked really threatening, breaking like that and using the width. And for the rest of the game, I just saw them sit back and try to hold on to their lead. And I think his media must be really good, because people think Gareth Southgate is a young manager, and this man is older than Pep Guardiola / they're the same age. So we really just need to call a spade with the fact that he's a poor coach and has been poor since coming up in England's ranks and never should have had the job in the first place. I think he's a fantastic manager, and the togetherness in this team is great. The players are playing peanuts in terms of minutes. Come on, they fight for the cause, they want it. But I think tactically, I don't think he's the right man to lead this group with the amount of talent that they have up front. And I don't think there was anything on his resume prior with Middlesbrough and whatever to suggest that he was the right man to do it. But that's just one take there. In the match itself, I saw him try to take the same or a similar approach to what people call his pragmatic style. That just ended up being very, very negative. Throughout, they just conceded lots and lots of possession to Italy, let them control the game, and didn't really even have an outball or a strategy to have an outball. And Emeka and I talked about this before, but having Mount, no Grealish, and really just having Harry Kane on for the entirety of the game just meant that there wasn't any sort of ball carrier taking it forward. When Bukayo Saka came on, they was trying to remedy that a little bit, but they had already sat back for the entire game, lost momentum. And I thought that the changes that he made in the game were also not the most forward-thinking. I'm thinking Henderson coming off, Walker coming off, and just the other things that he just did with managing the squad and bringing on those players for the penalty shootouts, which we'll get into. But overall, I thought Italy responded well to going behind, controlled it, created chances. Chiesa being very, very direct, created a lot of good opportunities, breaking through the lines, and was really a revelation in this tournament. But I think it was really key to breaking what ended up starting to look like a deep lying block from England. And I'm just curious to see what you guys also got from the game and what you thought of about how things transpired. And I'll start with you, Emeka.
Okay. Okay, I'll get to the Gareth Southgate point in a bit. But so in terms of how the game went, we spoke about what would England do to win the game, and how would Italy win the game. So the first thing I said was England had to start fast and capitalize on the home crowd, and they did that.
Yeah.
And we also did mention that Italy's midfield was light years ahead, and eventually you could tell that the quality it told very, very, very clearly. Like you have Jorginho, you have Verratti, who are two of the best at like recycling the ball in the game. And their passing is always on point, nothing less than 90% in pretty much all games. So I thought that quality started telling in the end when England's like the momentum and the ginger and the energy from the crowd started wearing off. and obviously conceding an unlucky goal like that, it just like wore them down even further. So that didn't surprise me. But in terms of Gareth Southgate, I definitely disagree that he's a poor coach. I don't think he's a poor coach. I think he does have his limitations and his weaknesses, and he's clearly a cautious coach. But you can't tell me he doesn't. He throughout the tournament, I think he got most things tactically spot on. He knows how to set up a team. He knows how to cover the weaknesses. Yes, he's definitely a bit cautious. And again, international management, there's so much to lose where like you hardly find teams that play really good football. And that's why Mancini deserves credit. And I'm sure he's probably all of our manager of the tournament because he did find that cohesion and he did find that offensive penetration. But definitely Gareth Southgate was definitely scared of losing and scared to overcommit, which he did in the game, which cost them the result. And he deserves blame for that. But to say he's poor tactically, I definitely disagree because especially as a Mourinho fan, when you have to respect someone that knows how to set up a team, even if, yes, there's a bit of like he hasn't managed to the best of his ability, the offensive talent he has, but I feel he definitely does deserve credit for how he set up this group of players and the team to be effective. And there's room for growth because now he knows where he's messed up. He knows maybe he has to be a bit more risk taker. And we might see more of that in the World Cup next year. So I definitely don't think he's a poor coach. But in the end, Italy were deserved winners. They're the better team and the better midfield took more risks. They were more comfortable on the ball, less workhorses, and they deserved the result. But I'm sure the extra time performance and the lack of changes will haunt Southgate for many years to come because Italy were there for the taking. Chiesa went off, Verratti went off, and those were their two best players for me because Chiesa was like the one outlet and Verratti was doing his thing. So I thought once that happened, I thought like in extra time, Italy hardly really counted because there was nothing there for them. So that was when England had to take it. And when you bring on Rashford and Sancho at the end of the extra time, instead of bringing them on at the start of extra time, I thought that was the decisive mistake. And that's what killed it because Italy were definitely there for the taking in extra time. And Southgate is definitely going to have sleepless nights on that.
Just as kind of a mental exercise, because I was really shocked by how much people try to paint Southgate as this new, young, fresh manager. Do you know how old Southgate is?
No, he's not a new, young, fresh manager. But it's just he's the best English manager in a long time. So of course he deserves credit.
Southgate is 50 years old. He's older than Pep Guardiola. Luis Enrique is 50. Luis Enrique is 51. Mancini is 56.
Southgate has never managed Barcelona.
So that's what I'm telling you. What qualifies him to be England coach and not be seen as a poor coach? If you look at what Enrique has accomplished at 51, Guardiola at 50, and I'm not saying I'm comparing to the best of the best, but I'm saying he has had a whole career to coach, has not achieved anything.
I think that's very harsh to say because we're yet to see the best of him from this English squad.
At 50?
If Southgate managed Barcelona, it's not won a few trophies too.
I think you're getting hung up on the age factor. It's not a factor of age. I don't
say we're yet to see the best of him at 50.
We're better to see. Yeah, why?
This is the best job he's got.
Yes, exactly.
Best job he's got in his career.
Why?
Correct. Why did he get it, or why is this the best job he's got?
Why is this the best job? Why don't we ask those questions?
What?
Because his football is about opportunity. Like, do you think if like Luis Enrique, did he deserve the Barcelona job, or did he get it based off being an ex-player and connection?
Zidane deserved to manage Real Madrid.
Be Madrid manager.
And then, I think we're jumping to conclusions a bit too quick. What I will say, and I will agree, is that he's not the best in-game manager, and I see similarities with him and Ole Gunnar Solskjaer in terms of analyzing the game in-game and saying, okay, this is kind of what I need to change up, whether it's personnel or tactics. But like Emeka said, he has proven by getting to this Euro final that he can set up a team to be.
I mean, I don't think we should read too much into that because this has been. I'm sorry to cut you off. This has been the most. This has been a complete joke of a tournament with England playing 6 out of 7 of the games at home. Playing the teams you're talking about are teams like Scotland, Denmark, Ukraine was their only away game that would probably the worst side to make it to the young. So when we say he got to the final, it wasn't the most and he played the worst Germany side in 20 years. It wasn't the most difficult route to the final.
Who lost England out of the last Euros?
Iceland.
Remember?
Yeah,
Exactly.
no. I mean, and who was the coach?
That's my point. So like you
That's
can't. So who was the coach at Iceland? It wasn't Southgate.
No, but what I'm saying is that you're comparing him to another poor coach with another poor result.
No, my point is like,
that's not the point.
You can't take it for granted that you're saying, beat the poorest Germany.
You can only beat who's
in front of you. And England in the last how many like decades have been losing to teams that they're not meant to lose to, and they get criticized. So
along the line,
the job.
For the past 55 years, they don't want the trophy.
Well.
Any trophy, any major international trophy. For the past 55 years, right? Telling me that it's been poor coaches all along. All the first final.
Majorly.
You can debate that, but as far as I'm concerned, I'm not going. Like, I know Southgate is not the best coach out there. I'm not saying that at all.
But he's definitely not a poor coach.
Yes, but what I'm saying is he's not a poor coach, number one, and I don't think you can fully fault this loss on him. What I saw in this game was a game of two halves. England started off the brighter squad, or the brighter side, maybe because home advantage, XYZ, blood was hot, scored an early goal, but like you said, they sat back a bit too early. And then Italy realized, man, once we dominate this midfield, we're done. Like, game's done. So second half, it was an entirely different team. Italy absolutely dominated. And I think the one problem I fought Southgate with, like you said, right, is when Italy was there for the taking, he didn't make offensive changes. He was still doing his whole. It's almost as if he has preset, for substitutions that he's going to make regardless of the context.
Him and Arteta in the same group chat.
And Ole a lot of times, and it's almost like, okay, contextually, this is when you bring on Rashford, Sancho, you bring on Grealish a bit earlier. And even the way they were playing, at some point, Harry Kane was dropping a lot deeper than he's done in previous games this tournament. And that's when maybe you can bring on. Why do you bring DCL to the tournament? Why do you have a goal scorer on your bench? You're not going to bring him on. Maybe you bring Harry Kane, you drop him a bit deeper, bring on a goal scorer. So that's what I fought him for. But in terms of setting up the team and drilling the sides, you could tell that they were fun. They looked like a very, very effective team.
But that first half, that people are saying that they dominated that first half. They had one shot.
They didn't dominate. They
didn't dominate, but exactly.
Like Mourinho says, you can be comfortable without the ball. They were extremely comfortable.
And Italy was not. I think Italy was kind of shell shocked, right?
Yeah.
They were like because even for that first goal, I don't know if that's a tactical thing that Southgate set up, but Walker made an overlapping run from right centre back. He made that decision to play Walker right centre back. End of the day, he's been justified a number of times for his selection. Sterling, one of those people justifying his selection. So I think you have to give him credit.
But what did you think about this selection in the final?
I don't think they should have. I would never think that they should play three at the back. That's my take, but that's also because I know the attacking talent. And I've seen them, the game that they play 4-2-3-1, Sancho plays, this might be agenda, but they scored 4 goals. So
his agenda, because that was against the worst team that they played.
So no, but my point with this is I never think it's right to set up that three at the back, except it's against a team that is playing three at the back as well, and you just want to match them for system. However, you knew Italy was coming to play 4-3-3. Set up your 4-2-3-1 as defensive as you want, but play the 4-2-3-1. And so I would fault the system, not exactly the personnel selection, if that makes sense.
So you agree with playing Mason Mount and Kieran Trippier?
I would say that based on, there was nothing to suggest that he wouldn't do that. Based on, Mount has come off the back of a fantastic season, winning the Champions League, right? Trippier has always been his guy that he goes to when he sets up with three at the back and in a more defensive shape. And he took off Trippier pretty early as well. So it's like, I can see how he could have played a bit more offensively, play Grealish and have Grealish, have a free role. But at the same time, I see why he picked Mount to play. Mount just didn't have an impact. Sometimes it's not just about the coach. Really, I feel like sometimes we get...
But all tournaments, Mount has been playing pretty much throughout tournaments and not doing anything. And Grealish comes on for 10 minutes, does something, and goes back to the bench.
I can argue the same about Harry Kane and whether he should start or not. But he scored...
I mean, there's the Kane argument, but the goals you can't really argue with. Even though they're granite goals, that don't mean anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Payne,
No, you're right.
You're
right. And I agree. That's why I said Kane playing the entire 120 minutes was a clear sign from Southgate that he was thinking about penalties. Kane is a good penalty taker. I'll keep him on because Kane was not adding anything to the game in extra time until
I don't think there's that
90.
element to international management that is pervasive across the board, but it's that whole trust thing. Like look at Lowe and how no matter what form he's saying, it's kind of like, do I trust this player in this big game? I will play them, right? So Sterling Kane, that's probably why they started the first couple of games. Then it ends up being justified with Sterling because he scored all their goals, leading up to the knockout stages. So I think Southgate is kind of the victim of that whole, as an international manager, you're in a knockout tournament where you have to play who you trust, and maybe he doesn't trust Grealish enough yet. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And it's easy to sit here, and I can't say it's 2020, right? If they had won that game, then Mount is kind of irrelevant in this conversation. But they didn't, sadly. So I wouldn't tip him as a poor coach. I just think he has a lot to grow into and a lot to learn. And maybe the next major time.
I just can't wrap my head around this.
Here's what I'm saying. If he makes the same, but why you hung up on age? Come on.
Because people have
how old is Nagelsmann?
Nagelsmann is in his 30s.
Correct. And that's what I'm saying. It's not a factor of age.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. Like, there's some things that you would have learned if you have a 20-year coaching career or a 15-year coaching career that we should be telling you now.
Not at this level. I don't think this is not about learning. It's about experience. So in the sense where he set up the team perfectly well, so he doesn't have to learn next time. He just more. So he has the experience of when you're not proactive enough and trust a lot of those attackers enough. So now he has experience of that. That okay, I set up a team perfectly well in the World Cup, in the Euros. We got as far as England have gotten in since 1990, and now in Euros in their history. So now we've done that, and now so he's learned that okay, he can trust certain people more and maybe not trust some people as much. So it's more about experience because this is the first time at the big time, and yes, for his first time in the big time, he's done a very, very good job. So in the World Cup now, for instance,
if he makes the same mistake, more
proactive.
If he makes the same mistakes in the World Cup, then we can say, what's going on? Like, why?
So it's not like
exactly what
he's
learning. Last time.
It's not like he's learning tactics. He's just it's about managing the team and managing the game. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Yeah, and you look at Mourinho or cite whoever you want to cite that's been in the game for a long time, and you look at their in-game management. That's typically what wins them games. It's the substitutions they make and the way they switch up their tactics in the game, right? That's what makes Pep a genius a lot of times is he notices this weakness in the team and he exploits that weakness. Southgate sadly has not reached, and I get your point in saying why has he not reached that level, right? But look at scale. This is the biggest job he's had, managing this England squad, and this is his first time to really prove himself, and he's done a fantastic job representing himself. So if he makes the same mistake or same type of mistakes next tournament, then you say, man, you really don't deserve this job anymore, right? But I think it's too early for that.
Yeah, Emeka, if I could get a quick 30-second answer about one, in-game management from Southgate, and two, that line of what I was negative to you. It would be great to have that quickly before we move on to talking about how the game ultimately ended.
What a sub that I feel he should have made.
What do you think about his in-game management in this game, and then also that lineup?
No, I thought it was really poor. I thought it was really poor. I mean, credit to him for bringing on Saka for Trippier fairly early, second half. But again, I guess he was rectifying his early mistake. But for me, it was all about the extra time. I said once Chiesa left, and Chiesa was the one that was stretching England, and once Verratti went off the pitch, that was just it. That was when you go for the kill. And a brave manager that's not so scared of losing, and England got so far, so there's that fear of losing and losing all they've worked for. But a brave manager would have seen put on Rashford there, put on Sancho, then have Grealish there and go for it, because Italy were not threatening anymore. They were not threatening. Belotti wasn't doing much. Berardi is slow. They weren't threatening anymore. And Cristante, he was okay when he came on for Barella. So and the game was there to be won, and at home as well, again at home. And another thing we mentioned in the last show was that an advantage England have is the options they have off the bench. And I still can't believe for the life of me that he kept on Sterling and Kane the whole time. Like, it made absolutely no sense to me.
I agree, 100%.
And yes, Rashford and Sancho should have been on. And even if you wanted them to take penalties, at least get them in the game, get their confidence up, let them have touches, let them try and influence the game. But just bring them on at the end of
Rashford
extra
to
time,
play right
I don't
back.
know what he was thinking.
So,
I don't know what he was thinking. It was really, really poor. And I think the occasion and like the fear of losing will consume them, because that game was definitely there to be won in extra time.
Yeah, before we get into roundup of the entire tournament, the last thing we'll talk about, and we won't go too deep into it because I know people like to talk a lot about penalty shootouts, but the reality is everyone misses penalties and it's a lottery at that point. And
it's up to God. In the words of Ronaldo, it's up to God.
Exactly. So, but I still think it's relevant to talk about to some extent because that's how the game ultimately ended. What did you think about that shootout, Chinedu? What was going through your head? What did you think the teams got right? And some thoughts also on the saves. So we saw a few saves from keepers.
I mean, I think going in, I expected Italy to win just because of Donnarumma. Definitely not because of their penalty takers per se, but because of Donnarumma. I think it was, to be very honest, a very poor penalty shootout all round. However, I will highlight that, and I read an article on it, the best 47 seconds of Pickford's career, basically. Pickford was superb. He fed off the energy of the crowd. He made the saves he had to make. And when he saved Jorginho's pen, it kind of looked like, man, everything that could go right is going right for them. And obviously Saka steps up. But like Emeka said, I think Southgate played himself by putting on Rashford and Sancho in the 120th minute to come step up and take pens. They're cold. They haven't had a lot of touches in the game, actually in the tournament.
In the whole tournament.
And then you put them on in the final and say, go and score this penalty. Prior to Rashford's run-up, actually, like
exactly before you get into Southgate, Rashford, why is he debuting his new penalty taking?
Exactly.
Four new penalty taking styles that I have never tried before.
He said it, lack of confidence.
Yes,
like
he said it.
He wasn't
lack
sure
of confidence, and
he's come out and said that.
Yeah, he said that.
Okay.
He said lack of confidence, and he was trying to buy himself more time because he actually stood on the same spot for 5 seconds, and then he did like a little Ronaldinho run up. Then he did a little stutter step. Then he did, and you could tell that he wasn't. You look at the game against PSG. Rashford.
I thought exactly everyone cites the PSG game as he can deal with the pressure.
Smashes the ball into the back of the net. But look at moment. Look at context. We had the momentum at that time. He was playing like we felt like we could win that game. He's put on in the 120th minute, and his one job is going to score this penalty in front of, first of all, England. There were the England stands, and so facing thousands of England fans. And you know how crazy it gets there. And the pressure is immense. I wouldn't go so far as to say, like, he couldn't have scored it, but I can see why he didn't score it, if that makes any sense. But I was super impressed by Donnarumma. Huge framing goal, and he was fantastic. All penalty shootouts that Italy had. Made the last save and stood up like he didn't even know what happened.
I don't think he knew they won. I think he didn't know that they had won yet.
He said
he definitely did. He said he knew.
He said he didn't know.
There was no way he knew. Like
I was like, this guy must be the most.
Nobody's that cold. I mean,
that was the sickest thing I ever saw.
He said he didn't know.
But also, I think it's just to summarize. I think the nerves got to England, and a crop of young players playing in front of home fans, that can be very daunting. And the what's it called? The nerves got to them, and they just weren't able to convert. That's it. Kudos to
amazing for breaking the camera.
No, not much to say. Not much to add to that. I mean, Donnarumma is 6'5", and I read that he has a 68% penalty save rate. So again, like that was just the advantage, and it's such a large reach and a huge reach. So I'm not surprised he saved those penalties. But again, it's just about the man management and in-game management, and for you to bring on those guys. Not saying again that they couldn't have scored, but you put them at a massive disadvantage. And if you had even showed them confidence in the tournament, like, okay, I trust you. And even reports have come out that the England squad were really surprised that Rashford didn't get more minutes because apparently he was killing it in training all tournament and he was hardly used. So you now bring him on to, in England's biggest moment in their Euro history. Like, I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised by the outcome, but so that's really all there is to it. And Saka is your fifth penalty taker. Like, just certain things. Like, I'm not saying, he shouldn't have picked Saka to take one if Saka was confident. But then you surely put Saka earlier on. Maybe
exactly.
Let's
go like in Arsenal. You go Aubameyang, then you go Lacazette, then you go
Saka.
Pepe, then you go Willian because he was Chelsea's penalty taker. Then you go David Luiz last season. Then maybe you go Xhaka. And that's 6 people before you've even considered that Saka could be anywhere near a penalty.
Yeah,
and he's your fifth penalty taker. Come on.
So that's the criticism. I want the fact that Saka took one is not. I don't really have an issue with that based on, from my experience and like watching football over the years. Normally, if you're there in that moment, it's because you're confident you can take one. And like other people weren't as confident as you. Like Grealish might say like, he said he wanted to take one.
He didn't want to take one.
How like serious were you about it? Like how much conviction did you have? Yeah, like I can take this. Because one thing to say, yes, I'm here. That I'm So the guys that really wanted to, and the guys that had the bottle to, like Maguire, like he took the ball as a leader.
Exactly.
Like, okay, I'm going to take this.
Yeah.
He's never. I don't think he's ever taken a penalty before. So like, if you really had that conviction as a senior player. If Sterling had that conviction as a senior player, the likes of Sancho and Saka wouldn't have taken it. So
people that have taken for their clubs.
For their clubs. I have no issue with Saka taking it. But yeah, the fact that he was the fifth taker, I feel was a weird choice.
I also don't even think Sancho takes penalties for Dortmund.
No,
that was pretty odd.
He does.
No, he does. He takes like 6. He's taken like 6 penalties and he's never missed actually.
Those 3 penalties were really poor. I know everyone wants to talk about Donnarumma, but those were very bad penalties.
Rashford wasn't that bad.
Not talk about Rashford. I'm talking about the 2 saves he made. Rashford's was actually fine. It was actually a pretty decent attempt. Yeah. Sancho's penalty I could have saved, as well as Saka's penalty. I'm serious.
You're not a keeper.
No. I have my gloves here. I can put them out. Like I'm not a keeper. But literally they were almost down the middle. He just needed to dive. So
you're right.
Yeah.
That's
another thing.
I think it's very easy for people to do that whole, Saka is 19, let's protect him as much as possible. Which, like, all is fine and good, but at the end of the day, I looked at it and I was like, you still have to take a bit of responsibility for taking such a not so good penalty.
Yeah,
so, he did take responsibility by taking it. Like I don't know, anyone can miss.
No, like you can't just hide because the penalty was bad. It's not bad that you're young.
Because at the end of the day, you're a professional playing at that level. It doesn't I'm just saying. I think a lot of people started excusing, man, he should never take that penalty basically because he's young. Blah blah. He's at that level anyway. Age doesn't matter. So I mean, end of the day, it was a poor penalty. Good save.
I agree with you. Anyone can miss, and I think the support should come because of the backlash that he's getting for other reasons, for race reasons, not because he's 19 and missed the penalty. Because it was a bad penalty, and that regardless of whether you're 19 or 29 or 39, that was a bad penalty.
Exactly.
We should also just call it spade a spade.
Exactly, because if you remember, Lukaku missed the penalty in the Super Cup, the season I think before he got sold from Chelsea. Missed the penalty in the Super Cup. No one cited age. It was just, that's a bad penalty. He took a horrible penalty, actually. And no one cited age. But, however, obviously we can cite age in this case because he's getting a lot of stick and a lot of backlash.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to kind of make it clear that, like, it's 2021, if you're racially abusing players, whether online or in person, like, you're an idiot. No other way to put it. So.
And to find another sport. Last thing before we move on, we've seen this entire tournament, and we've seen teams like Italy, Spain play with an identity. And Emeka mentioned this a little bit at the start of the episode, that there is this notion that's pretty widely accepted that international teams can't have an identity. There isn't enough time for them to play a certain way and be drilled and those types of things. So having seen what Enrique and Mancini have been able to do, I want to get your thoughts on what and actually also Vladimir Pekovic, also and Kasper Hieland, if I'm saying his name correctly, have been able to do. Your thoughts on international teams actually playing with some sort of identity?
So yeah, no, I think it is possible, but it's difficult, and that's why it's rare and it's great to see. So I think there's some components to it. I feel some teams have a better chance of doing it because you do see the teams that do play still really good football and are, like I say, international teams are the teams that have the best technical players. And I feel like you have a lot of times when you have that ability on the ball, when you see like the Germans, you see the Spaniards, you see a midfield of Verratti and Jorginho. When you have a team that gives you the chance to keep the ball, I feel that's a good starting point because, of course, when you have the ball and you have technical players that play a certain way for their clubs, it's easier to move that into international football. So I think there's an element of that, like the ability of the players and the types of players they have and the types of teams they play for and the managers they play for at club level and international level. It makes it's a good starting point. So I think there's that. And like I said, so the managers, Luis Enrique, Mancini, they play good football and they're obviously very good managers as well. Very, very good managers as well, which helps. But I do think a big part of it, like I said, is the types of players they have and the ability they have. Because again, Spain, they average the most possession in the tournament, 67% possession all tournament. And with that, again, it gives a great starting block where you now have the likes of the Barcelona players like Busquets at the anchor of your midfield. Pedri play for Barcelona as well. They play together. They play together on the national team, and it's that cohesion is already there. Plus, a certain way they play is already there. So I think that's a big reason. But overall, it is definitely difficult because you're bringing some of the best players in the world together. You're bringing players with different abilities, played with different clubs, different styles of play, and some managers just international football is about results. So some managers are going for the results. Gareth Southgate, he's just trying to get the win. He's just trying to get the results. Roberto Martinez, he's just trying to get the win and the results. There's no way reason Belgium should be playing such a disgusting 3-4-3 all through. Like he doesn't even change. Like he's just So some managers are trying to get the results. Even Deschamps, you have the most talented squad in the world, and you're still playing a rigid 4-2-3-1. And it's like so
playing four center backs at the back.
Four center backs like Tony Pulis. So I think it's an element is part of the fact that some managers just want to get the win. Yes, that's the probably safest way to play because you don't have time to really build that chemistry. So some managers are like that. But overall, like I do think the teams that actually make that effort and the coaches actually make that effort deserve plaudits because again their jobs are on the line and they still take the risks. But the main thing is that they leverage on those players, they leverage on partnerships, they leverage on players that already play together at club level, bring them together at international level, as well as capitalize on teams and their players that are very good at keeping the ball and they're very skillful. So I think that's my take on that.
Awesome. Thanks for that. Now we'll move on to recapping the tournament and we'll start with Emeka and some of his thoughts from the just concluded tournament. All right. Emeka, over to you.
Okay, so yeah, I'm sure most people wouldn't go for a 3-4-3, but I did that because that seemed to be very in vogue in this tournament. Quite a lot of teams played three at the back with wing backs, and England did that. Switzerland did that. Quite a few teams. Ukraine at times, Belgium obviously as we mentioned, and the Germany obviously as well, and the pioneers of the formation, Italy, actually didn't do it, which is like a bit ironic. But again, this was like a trendy formation this tournament, so I decided to go with it. So in goal was the player of the tournament the official player of the tournament, Donnarumma, and he came of age this tournament. He's always obviously been extremely talented, but now I think he's firmly established himself as top 3, top 5 in the world. He's so imposing, so imposing. He has weakness on the ball, and that's something that was definitely targeted. You could see teams pressing him when he's on the ball. But his shot stopping, his size, his agility for a 6'5" man, and he saved the penalties to win them the tournament, so he has to be there. Bonucci, another fantastic tournament. His passing was sensational. He played all games. This is why I edged for him over Chiellini, because he played all the games. Chiellini missed a couple. But yeah, just his leadership, scoring in the final. And again, there's so many times I watch him, and just his distribution from the back is just, I think he's the best at it. He's just so exquisite. And Harry Maguire, for me, he had a fantastic tournament. He was, what's in the website, like statistically, he was actually the best player in the tournament in terms of his defending. Yeah, who scored? His defending.
But there were some players there that you just have to.
In terms of his progressive passing, he was the top. And yeah, he's just fantastic this tournament. So assured, so confident. He brought out the ball so comfortably. Obviously, he scored a massive goal. Set pieces, he was monstrous. He was a leader. So for me, he had a fantastic tournament, and I think he's firmly established himself as a top defender. No matter how much criticism he gets, and people want to hate on him, but I think he's a top defender, and he's shown that you hardly ever see his weaknesses get exposed. And that for me is when you know a defender is very good, because you say, okay, he's not the quickest or most agile, but how many times do you ever see him get caught out of his position? And in United, but he played 3 at the back, maybe 2 games this tournament. England played him and John Stones most of the tournament. So don't bring your agenda here. Your mind.
We don't do that here. We don't do that here.
Wrong show.
Wrong show.
Simon Kerr as well. Yeah, he was another top defender. And another reason I put 3 at the back, because I wanted to incorporate these guys, his leadership, his positional sense. Obviously, he literally saved a man's life in this tournament as well. And I think he deserves credit for that. And just the way he carried that young Danish team into the semi-finals deserves great credit. And he's shown he might not be the best defender in the world, but he's a very, very, very good and solid and reliable defender and captain. So for me, I wanted to mix the team a bit. So not to just have everyone that's been in the final, and because it would have been a bit boring. But for me, a person that made, sorry, my internet is.
No, we see you good.
It's okay. So a person that made a good impression on me this tournament was Dumfries. I thought he had a very good tournament. Unfortunately, obviously they got knocked out by the Czechs after De Ligt's red card, but he made a very, very big impression on me this tournament at right wing back. His
right
running,
wing,
his
you
stamina.
mean?
Yeah, exactly, pretty much. His running, his stamina, and it was solid defensively as well. He got in behind so many times and caused havoc for the opposition. And I thought, he was one of the bright stars of the tournament. So credit to him. So for me, my midfield 2, since I couldn't have a 3, the 2 that stood out for me were Højbjerg and Verratti. Højbjerg showed a different dimension to his game than what Mourinho allowed him to show. And even like when he was at Southampton, he showed a lot more of his playmaking abilities. Like I just saw him in FM terms just as a defensive midfielder, but he actually played as more of a DLP, a deep line playmaker in this tournament, getting 3 assists, which is not something you would expect. So credit to him. And for me, the star midfielder for me was Verratti. I know he started a bit later, but he came into the team after Locatelli's brilliant start and took over that team for me. I know there's a toss-up between him and Jorginho, but his creative abilities and not just his assured passing and playmaking. I have some stats here. He created the most chances in tournaments with 14. Most tackles, second most tackles made after Di Lorenzo with 18. And even in terms of duels, he and Jorginho is the more defensive player, but Jorginho had only one more duel won than him, 41-40. So, and obviously Verratti had 3 assists as well. So for me, he was, and the fact that he came a bit late, I'm giving him credit for that, because a few people thought he might not come into the team, to take over from Locatelli, but he came in the tougher games and the knockout stages and really, really was assured. And he just showed he's an all-round midfielder. You might think he's just a sitter or playmaker or whatever, but he showed someone like Thiago that you can also be that deep line playmaker, but you can put yourself about, you can tackle, you can harry people defensively, as well as create that final pass. So credit to him, and he's one of my players of the tournament.
Would you say that he gave Thiago some new ideas?
But Thiago is not capable of that one. No. But yeah, so left back, definitely sure. Left wing back, Roberto Carlos. 3 assists, 1 goal. Defensively, so assured. Scored in the final. Such a heartbreaker that I couldn't have scored the winning goal in the final. But Roberto Carlos. I don't need to say too much. I said 3 goals, 3 assists, 1 goal, numerous chances created, and I don't think the there could be any debates about him at left wing back. Although Zuba was a semi shout, but I feel like with Shaw's goal in the final and his performance in the whole tournament, I think you can't really go against that. Left wing was one of the players of the tournament. Raheem Sterling. I won't say it was sensational, but he scored key goals at key moments. And for me, the reason why he's there for me as well is extra time against the Danish. Everyone is off their feet, struggling. He was still sprinting, taking on players, beating players in the 120th minute, and he carried England at times in a rigid system, a rigid setup. He was the one that showed the most personality, and like I said, scored the biggest goals at the biggest moments. So he has to be there. I'm wrapping up quickly. Chiesa for me, I was torn between him and Forsberg, because Forsberg, his performances before they got knocked out were absolutely sensational. Scored 4 goals, but his overall play was just really, really good. But Chiesa for me, he came into the team late because Berardi started the tournament. But once Chiesa started, it was a no-brainer. He was the one that helped stretch opposition teams, his pace, his dribbling, and he scored some very key goals for them as well in key moments. And for me, I thought he was that bit of difference that Italy needed, because like Insigne, Berardi, even Immobile was a non-factor this tournament, but Insigne and Berardi love the ball to feet all the time. And Chiesa was the one that he can get the ball to feet, but he can also stretch defenses. So he's my right winger. And Cheek for me, I had to put him in over the likes of Ronaldo, Lukaku. I felt he showed the potential we all thought he had. He was the joint top scorer, and he scored the goal of the tournament for me, where I just felt he was a very big factor in this team. He scored a goal in the knockout stages to get to knock out a better team in the Netherlands. So for me, he has to be my number 9 based off he scored goals, he scored key goals, and he scored the best goal.
Amazing. And you want to talk us through your coach selections just very briefly?
Roberto, just quickly, I mean, the best manager of the tournament took a team that I think they were like the 6th or 7th favorites to win the tournament, and just the record they've been on, I think about 30 plus games unbeaten, won the tournament and beat some damn good sides to get here as well. And and again, like we spoke about, he has that team playing amazingly cohesive football, and everyone knows their jobs, but at the same time they're doing it with style and no fear. Assistant coach, Luis Enrique, I thought he took a slightly unfashionable Spanish team with a lot of holes, and probably the worst Spanish team we've had for a while. But I think he overperformed, and I think he got a lot of those players from unfashionable teams like Sociedad, Leipzig, and the rest, and he got them to the semi-final, where I thought they were unlucky to win. They created the most chances this tournament. They averaged the most possession this tournament, and after like the first couple of games where they were a bit dull, I felt he finally found a way to actually get them creative chances and still maintaining their composure and possession on the ball. So I think it deserves a lot of credit.
If you can talk us through this next slide with one-liners for each of your selections, that would be really helpful.
Sommer, fantastic performances and made a lot of saves in key moments. The France game was the tipping point, and he was close to not being the number 1 if Donnarumma didn't win. Spinazzola was before Luke Shaw started shining, he was the guy, and before he got injured, he was sensational for them. And also like maybe sentimental pick after the injury, but he was fantastic. Jorginho, Mr. Composure, Mr. 100%, and solid passing, solid defensively. He had amazing stats this tournament, and he was a key cog in that possession-heavy midfield with defensive stability.
If there's anything we do on this show to debunk the myths that people at places like ESPN FC, people like Frank Leboeuf have been pushing that Jorginho is not good defensively, let's start to stop that, because that's not backed up by any data or facts. So I just want to add that in.
Pedri, just based on the fact that he played extremely mature football, way beyond his years, put out the likes of Rodri, Thiago, and he carried himself with so much composure and maturity, and he had to be there. Pogba, I think this was a no-brainer. Before he got knocked out, for me, he was the player of the tournament. Skillful, decisive, and just played with so much freedom and composure. and access skill. And before until he got knocked out, he would have been in the team of the tournament for sure. Forsberg, moving like the Swedish Neymar, he was moving crazy, moving like I've never seen him move before. Like he was skill, finishing.
I told you it's because he's always injured in big games that Leipzig plays, so people don't get to see him.
He showed me a different level. He was fantastic. And Lukaku, he led the line really well for Belgium. Continues breaking records for them. And if I wanted to be a sub striker, it would definitely be Lukaku.
And one-liners here as well.
Yeah, Bonucci for me, he played every single game, created chances, considered only 4 goals in 7 games. And like I said, he was the leader of that team because Chiellini came in, and obviously Chiellini is the most vociferous and everything, but Bonucci was the one constant in terms of the centre-back partnership. And for me, the fact that he scored the goal in the final, and the penalty in the final as well, for me, the player of the tournament. It's a tricky one, but for me, he was the one that stood out, and his personality and composure in front of goal stood out as well. Damsgaard, I picked for revelation just based off. I heard of him in Sampdoria, but like I haven't watched much of him, and he showed me some superb talent, superb quality, composure way beyond his years. And even though he's about to lose all his hair at 20, but he showed me fantastic
too much
quality.
Idea ball. Too much idea ball.
I'm sure he's gonna.
That's
get
why Thiago is bald now. Too much idea ball.
He's gonna get a big move in the next year or two. And Pedri, I say my player of the tournament just based on playing senior man football, playing like a grown-ass man, putting out the likes of Thiago and Rodri, and just really dominating that midfield in his own way, short passes, incredible movements, off the ball movement, and defensive work rate as well. And it was part of the reason why I said Spain created the most chances and averaged the most possession in this tournament. Mancini, we already spoke about, was fantastic leadership and management and bringing together that team and making them very cohesive. Yeah, she for me was the goal of the tournament for sure. That halfway line curler, and I don't think I need to say too much on that. If you haven't seen it, and if you haven't seen it, you probably shouldn't be listening to this show because what were you doing? so
Facts.
So yeah, if you haven't seen it, go on YouTube. And France Switzerland, yes, was the best game for me based on goals, the amount of goals scored, the shock, the penalty misses, Mbappe missing a penalty, France going 3-1 up after one of the goals of the tournament in Pogba and still losing that game. For me, just the shock value plus entertainment value, for me, it was a no-brainer.
Amazing. We'll move on to Chinedu's awards. Over to you, sir.
I'll do a quick spot the difference because Emeka has a bunch of players similar to mine in his.
But you're playing a different formation as well.
Very different formation. In 4-3-3, it's the formation that actually won the Euros. So you can keep your 3 at the back. Thank you very much. I will play a 4-3-3 here. And the main reason for that was I think there were 3. I wanted to get the 3 midfielders in there that really, really impressed me. And I felt like, that there was more than enough room for that in a 4-3-3. But 3 people at the back that stood out that Emeka didn't mention to me, at least, were Di Lorenzo. It was fantastic for Italy, I think. He kind of provided that balance so that when they are left-sided, they had a very left-sided side, obviously, with their left-sided attack providing more of the threat. And so whenever Insigne obviously cut in on the inside, they always had that, whether Spinazzola or Emerson pushing forward. And Di Lorenzo was always able to, cover and provide that balancing at the back. So for that, I think he was my right back of the tournament. Here as well was great in terms of his leadership ability and taking Denmark to where they actually got to. I think that was fantastic. And as a unit, that whole Denmark defensive line, I think they did fantastically well, but obviously I had to just mention one. Chiellini is in there for me over Bonucci just because the games he played, I could see the clear impact in terms of I think Chiellini is the more vocal, the more assertive, if you may, leader. Bonucci is fantastic, of course, and they go hand in hand. But I thought Chiellini, in the games he played, I think he missed a couple due to injury, but the games he played, he was absolutely fantastic. And then obviously Donnarumma, Shaw, Emeka has touched on those two. Jorginho, fantastic. This was one tournament where I did not struggle to see his value in the midfield, and he was everything that we've always known him to be. If that makes any sense. Very composed, able to and many times split the line as well, as opposed to a lot of times where we see him, he's just kind of keeping it very safe. And he was amazing defensively as well. Verratti comes into the squad, obviously a lot of, not backlash, but a lot of conversation around if he should be benching Locatelli, but he proves why he is a world-class player. And he was fantastic every second. And like Emeka said, Højbjerg obviously added a lot, or at least we saw a lot of his game, especially on the attacking front. He's touched on Sterling and Chiesa, but someone that I thought was very impressive and my surprise package to include in this was Dolberg. It wasn't just he ended the game with 2 goals. I said he ended the game. He ended the tournament with 2 goals in 2 games. But it wasn't just with 3 actually. Oh, I thought it was 2. It wasn't just his goals though. It was his link-up play.
Because he got 2 in the first one, and then that one where he slid after connecting the cross from Myla.
Yeah, that was a fantastic goal. And I think it was his link-up play and his ability to bring the rest of the players into the team. Because at first I think they were playing Poulsen, Braithwaite, and eventually Braithwaite had to move out wide. But you could just tell that that Dolberg has that centre forward instinct as opposed to just a pure like out and out striker. But the lad can still finish. And so I think he really, really impressed me, and he's someone I would put up there in my 43. Okay, coaches.
Yeah.
So Mancini, that's a no-brainer. And then Petkovic, I think people undermine in a way what Switzerland did in this tournament. And it was a lot down to their system and their ability to play as a team. And obviously a very, very well coached side. And that's why I think he deserves my assistant coach. They obviously knocked out the world champions in France, and they had a really, really good run until they were knocked out. So I give him my assistant coach.
One-liners for your substitutes.
Yeah. So Emeka kind of touched on Soma. Soma was fantastic. I think if Donnarumma hadn't won the actual trophy, then Soma would have definitely been my pick of the bunch. He made amazing saves when he had to. Penalties was on point as well. Someone I also included there was Akanji. I think he was quite solid individually within that Swiss unit. And I really was impressed by because obviously very young defender.
Pronounced in Nigerian way.
Exactly. They say Akanji. Akanji.
Akanji. Very, 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 very impressed by his ability to shine like in a unit or in a system like that. Pogba, like Emeka said, impressed, was worth every dollar, and really, really shined through. And it was a shame that France went out the way they did. If not, we would be talking about a very different team of the season or team of the Euros. Barella, this was my first time watching him consistently, and I must say the lad is good. The lad is very good, very, very, very solid attacking, kind of that box to box. And he was a good complement to Verratti and Jorginho that kind of are those controllers. Barella was always the one that was driving forward with the ball and always trying to make things work. And I really, really enjoyed watching him in this tournament. My goals, Ronaldo, bad goals. He wasn't very impressive, but based on the stats, I would just throw him in there. Little shout out to Ronaldo. Ronaldo, if you're listening, call me, bro. Sheik was absolutely fantastic. Like Emeka said, finally saw the Sheik that everyone has been hyping up and kind of turned into the player that we expect him to be. Not quite yet on a consistent level, but he was really, really good in this tournament and scored a few important goals as well. Lukaku, I think coming to this tournament, we expected him to be one of the highest goal scorers, and he was delivered on his, on those promises. And I think it was unfortunate as well that Belgium was knocked out by a better side in Italy, but he definitely was a very good player. Pulled up play, always great. And he's added a lot to his game in terms of playing at Inter, in terms of taking on players. And there's something he kind of had at United as well, but, being able to also turn provider. And so I was very impressed by him.
Then your awards.
My awards, player of the tournament, Raheem Sterling, carried England on his back. Alas, he didn't come home, but he was very, very impressive and justified Southgate selections. My biggest revelations, I actually could not choose one. So
because you don't like to follow instructions.
I don't use to follow instructions. I'm actually I'm actually a rebel. But I'll go with
you're the type of manager to be like Fonseca and want to play 12 players or make 7 subs.
We make our rules over
I couldn't
here.
decide.
We make our rules over here. But I'll go with the 3Ds. Doku really, really impressed me. I'd say it was a huge revelation to me because I have not watched him prior to this, and he looked like he belonged on the stage. Damsgaard and Dosberg, obviously, I think most people would cite them as having been impressed because they had to fill in some really, really big shoes. Ericsson stepping off and then Gosen getting injured as well, and they did it with the class and the maturity of players that have been doing this for a long time, and so super impressed by them. My young player of the tournament, Pedri as well, played 120 minutes a bunch of times, so surprised he wasn't fatigued, but you could see, kind of the hype around, the new Iniesta, and a lot of people get that title, but so composed on the ball, has 10 more minutes than everybody else on the field, so very, very impressed.
Can I actually just interrupt you real quick? Just when you mentioned Poulsen, I just remember how, I think this was 2018, and I was really trying to convince my cousins that I know ball, and I'm telling you that this Richarlison guy is not good. And I've been saying it for a while. And there's just some players that I just feel like people think are decent that I just don't see. Richarlison is one of them, and Poulsen is another. Like, I just watch and I'm just like, this guy, like, I don't get it. But that's what he just reminded me of. And that's why I thought I'd bring it up. So I'm actually glad that Damsgaard got to come in, Dolberg, and didn't have to see too much of Poulsen.
Very technical players, and they proved that Denmark is they have a bright future ahead of them.
And your coach?
Obviously top two, Mancini. Goal of the tournament, Pogba versus Switzerland, absolute screamer, absolute rocket, and very fitting in what looked like a game winner and a dagger. But
that's why he did 5 celebrations.
Job palliative too. Very sad for my lad Labili, but very impressed by the goal, and I hope he transfers.
Did we all pick the same game for game of the tournament?
It has to be. It has to be because shock, like Emeka said, entertainment value, the shock of it all, the fact that France, rallied around and came back. It was such a good game, and credit to Switzerland and what they did. And I was very, very surprised that they even had the belief to come back in that game, but I was very, very entertained.
Yeah, I saw some people saying Spain, Croatia, and I just, this game had better goals, more drama, and I just couldn't see that. So I'm going to go through mine super briefly, and then we'll call it a day. So that's my team. One with Schmeichel at the back because I know you guys haven't seen my team also, of course, taking it in and hopefully agreeing with some of my choices. I put in Kasper Schmeichel at the back because I think he had some performances where I just looked and thought, like, sometimes I would ask myself, are we going to start comparing him to his dad and saying like, I don't know where you stand on that, but it's not as crazy as
fraud. Because
really?
when I said Schmeichel before, you were telling me Sommer, and now you're putting Schmeichel.
No, Sommer is on my bench. It was between two of them for me.
No, you were like Sommer.
I already had Schmeichel in my team. That's why I didn't want to pick Schmeichel, so I could seem like I was the only one who saw it. No, I love Schmeichel and some of those saves against England and just that back 3/4 with the keeper that Denmark had going was just too solid, and I think he did a great job at the back, just leading amongst other leaders. So that's why he's in there for me. I have Bonucci and Chiellini because I couldn't choose. I thought I'd put Chiellini in the middle just because I think Bonucci might have a bit more legs and be able to play those long balls off of the left. Or sniffling.
My OCD, I just hate it when I see like the left footer has to be on the left. Like that just makes me
I feel that, but those balls
I hear your reason. I hear your reason. It's just like
and then I have Bonucci on the left side of my 3, Chiellini in the middle, just because he was a he was talking, he was later smiling throughout the tournament. He talked about a mark of a good defender being when you know what their weaknesses are, the pace, and it never gets shown. Bonucci and Chiellini went dribble past once in the entire tournament. I think that goes to show the type of tournament that they had. I put Kyle Walker because Kyle Walker was quite frankly very solid. Those balls into the channels, he easily tracked that back. He was still overlapping. And I think as the right of a three, he's also reinvented this game a little bit and is very, very effective in that position. I have Jorginho in the middle for all the reasons that you said before, so I won't dive deeper. I have Xhaka as well there because I thought this tournament was really a revelation. A lot of people who didn't know a lot about Granit Xhaka and his game and why people say he's a good player saw in this tournament how composed he is on the ball, how many times he plays successful forward passes and with accuracy, and just how good he is at reading the game and being combative in the midfield. I put in Højbjerg because I think he was my standout midfielder of the tournament. And reason being, like you mentioned, 3 assists, 11 chances created, and actually the most times possession was recovered with 51. So you can see the offensive productivity as well as defensive, and there's not much to say there. Spinazzola as kind of my right and my left wing back in this 3-5-2 for all the reasons I mentioned before. Sterling on the right, so having to do a little bit of defensive work, but Højbjerg there to help him out. But I think Sterling I actually prefer to see off of the right. So it was really easy for me to put him and Spinazzola in those positions. Up front, I have Chiesa because he's more of the stretcher of the defense. And I have him partnering up with Schick, who I thought was just consistent throughout the tournament, scored different types of goals against different types of opposition, and just showed that he's a class striker. And I'm excited to see what's next for his club career because those two up front were very, very productive in this tournament. Coach I have is Vladimir Petkovic. I saw Switzerland probably for the first time in a while, at least since I've been watching them playing with a true identity, dominating games against people like France, even Spain. I think if they didn't go to 10 men, I picked them to do something in that game, and they still did even with 10 men. So I think he's just drilled in the time that he's spent there. I think he's been there for 7 years, drilled this togetherness into the team, the system that he wants to play with. And it's shown in this tournament. They never looked like they were facing a team that was much better than them. And even when they went behind, they still showed mentality, composure on the ball, and played with, like you mentioned, Zuba, Seferovic. They have a system that works for them and that every player buys into. And I think that that's all credit to Petkovic. Then I have Kasper Hjulmand there because similarly, I think Denmark also played with an identity. They recovered well from the tragedy at the start of the tournament. And getting to the semifinals, I don't think there's anyone that won't tell you that that's not a fantasy story. No one would have expected that. They did it. They played well against England, took them to extra time, and were hard done by with the penalty that wasn't a penalty. And I just think throughout the tournament, they were solid defensively. Attacking wise, they came up with a bunch of different solutions with people like Damsgaard and have had a good balance of young players and also more experience. And I think Hjulmand just put all of that together, especially switching when they lost Eriksen to that 3 at the back and finding that system that allowed them to have a lot of balance going forward and defensively. I think we have to credit him for that. Then my substitutes, like I said, Sommer, my goalkeeper. I have Mela, 2 goals, 1 assist. I think it was a really, really productive really productive off the wings, very, very attacking, and also good defensively. And that assist for Dolberg with the outside of the boot, I think that was just delicious. Maguire was really good. I think it was dominant in the air, like you mentioned, coming out with the ball, looked very comfortable, and England just looked very comfortable defensively, so you have to put him in. I think Souček was really great for the Czechs. No one expected them to get as far as they did in the tournament. And I think him and Vladimir Sufa, who are kind of our Premier League people, gave really good accounts of themselves at the tournament and were really stars for their country. So Pedri, you mentioned senior man football, assured in possession, covered the most distance of anyone at the tournament, and was basically starting games consistently for an 18-year-old is just really impressive. And I think the future is really bright for him. Forsberg, like you mentioned, the goals, the overall play, carrying Sweden. Another person who I think would have had a much better tournament if not for a red card. So I have to throw him in there. And Damsgaard, a sensational free kick to be the first goal that England conceded. And another young player that just gave a really, really good account of himself in this tournament. And then my awards, my player of the tournament, I had to give it to Pierre-Emile Højbjerg. Like I said, that defensive productivity as well as attacking productivity made him, for me, the standout player in the tournament. My revelation was Patrick Schick. We all know what happened to his confidence when he went to Italy and then how he's kind of rebuilding that now. And I think at this tournament, he really showed that he's not done and that at 25, he's kind of at his peak and there's still places that he can go. Even in a team that didn't create that many chances, he still showed that he can lead a line, create something out of nothing, and was just, for me, the biggest revelation of the tournament because I didn't see that coming. Young player of the tournament, Chiesa, started off slow because he wasn't playing, but when he came in, he was the best player for me in Italy and the main threat in pretty much every game with his pace and his directness, always running at players, always looking to get his shot off. I think there was some stat about him having the most completions of an action when he picked the ball off, like with a shot or chance created or something like that. And I think it just speaks to his directness, which you can see with the eye test. I see Emeka about to say something.
This is not the first. So again, anytime we do young player, I notice you always go for the oldest cutoff. So you, because man is going to be 24 in a few months, and he's a young player of the tournament. And I always go for like the actual young player. Like you always do this, you go for like the person that has the
right
cutoff point. Like, this is a grown.
Is that the one they always
man.
give Rashford every year?
This is a grown.
Like you're still young. No, but that's fair. No, I mean, Pedri is a massive shout. Even people like Saka, people like Damsgaard. Yeah, but I just had to talk here because he's a grown man, but he's still in the brackets. I had to just sneak him in. Coach of the tournament, Pekovic, for reasons before that goal. I think we all picked the same goal of the tournament, that same game of the tournament, because it goes without saying. But those are my picks for the Euro 2020. Any thoughts on anything, Emeka?
I mean, Højbjerg, is a good shout. In terms of overperforming, performing more than what we expected. Denmark's fairy tale run after all that happened, showing a different side of his game. So yeah, credit. I wouldn't have picked him, but I definitely can see the rationale.
You didn't pick him.
I think he was my team on the tournament, but like I definitely can see the rationale behind that. But yeah, nothing really stood out as being extremely shocking. Spinazzola for sure. The fact that Spinazzola he's had a very, very good start, but he got injured, and Shaw then took off in the knockout stages, got to the final, scored in the final. But I mean, as a wing back and like the way Spinazzola played, I can see that, but I would definitely have gone for Shaw in that instance. But yeah, nothing crazy for once. So
for once, the what is it called? Looking back, I think someone as an honorable mention I should definitely had at least on my bench is probably Shaw, because he didn't really shine as much until the knockout stages, but when he did, he was actually, I don't think he shined at all until the knockout stages, but from the knockout stages, it was exceptional, I would say. And Spinazzola was the opposite, did everything from the group stages, first match of knockouts, and gets injured. So I can see the balance there and why he went the other way. So once again, leave agendas at the door, whether analyzing the game on socials, giving your thoughts and opinions. Just make sure that you ask yourself one very important question. Michael, what should the viewers ask themselves?
Do I know ball?
Thank you very much. Good night.